Good day. Welcome, Fedi Friends, to episode 7 of Fireside Fedi. I'm your host, Ozone. Fireside Fedi is a show about folks within the Fediverse. If you're seeing this, that means you as well. With me today is Andy Piper, head of communications of the Mastodon organization. Andy is an industry veteran that brings a very unique view of social networking to the Fediverse by having extensive tech and, of course, the social media background expertise. And he has 20 years of open source experience. He's worked for IBM, Cloud Foundry, and try not to gasp, but Andy even worked for Twitter, which is a good thing. We all have different experiences, right? And around the Fediverse, Andy's worked on projects including Postmarks, the social web tracker for FOSDEM, as well as working with one of our previous guests, Johannes, on fedidevs.org, as well as many other things. So, Andy, thank you so much for coming on and talking to us.
Well, thank you. I think a few folks have said this now, but thank you for doing this show. And I've been listening. I was coming back from South by Southwest. I was there for a pop-up called Fediverse House that our friends at Flipboard put on. And I was on the airplane coming back from there. And I think I got through the first 4 or 5 episodes of this show.
Oh, wow.
Just sitting there. I think you just that day had interviewed Johannes, and the episode, because you live stream, was like available straight away. So I think I got those first 4 or 5 episodes and listened to all of them in one sitting on the plane. And it's so great just to hear folks who, some of whom I've met, some of whom I haven't, just and with such different backgrounds. And I just really think it's a great approach and really refreshing way to like encounter the community. So thank you. And thank you for inviting me to be part of it.
Hey, none of us would be here without folks like yourself. All the different folks, Stux, Mr. Funky Dude, yourself, Johannes. So you guys, everyone spending energy, to make this thing happen. I'm just happy that I could do some small part of it and get to talk to amazingly awesome people like yourself. So thank you guys. Sorry, excuse me. Still getting over a cold, so I'm working on it. I'll try to mute my mic if I have to sneeze for anyone out there, but if not, I apologize. And as I apologized to Andy earlier, I normally stand, but the flu that's going around, folks, be careful. It's just going to sap your energy. So, but as always, before we start, how do you like to be addressed? Do you just go by Andy, Mr. Piper, Lord, King?
I've gone by Pipes at different times, but and I don't know whether that was in relation to my awesome karaoke skills, but Andy is fine, thanks. Yeah, that works.
Okay. So I mean, you're already jumping right in. Andy does karaoke.
I have been known to do karaoke. I'm jumping to the end of the interview, but I got really into the Aladdin movie back in the original Aladdin movie, the Disney cartoon version. So A Whole New World is one of my go-tos, and a couple of Coldplays as well. My nieces absolutely hate me. Well, when they were younger, especially. In fact, I'm sure they would just be as embarrassed by me serenading them with A Whole New World now as they were when they were much smaller. But anyway, yeah.
No, that's great though. Like I do that with my kids. I just start singing, and if it's a song they like, it's okay, because then they'll jump in and sing too.
Okay, yeah,
right. But 9 times out of 10, I'm just listening to something, and they're like, "Dad, stop! I don't want to hear it." Okay, so then my chat has to put up with it whenever I'm streaming. I start singing.
Amazing.
So who was Andy growing up? Did you you're a little kid, you're like, I want to get into software and I want to help change the world?
It's weird. I've always had an affinity for technology. I got an Acorn Electron, which was an 8-bit computer, sort of ZX Spectrum time in the 80s, and I grew up with those early 1980s computers. But I was taught myself as I went along, and academically, I went and did a history degree, so I just kind of followed my interests. I got really, I got really into research and those sort of things. But yeah, I've always been into tech. I used to take home, borrow. The school I used to go to had a modem that I used to borrow and take home during the school holidays and run up my parents' home phone bills. Joining back in the day, there were these things called bulletin boards, BBSs, that you could dial into. So, I mean, I've always messed around with tech, and I had some early experiences writing software when I was in my teens with a school friend, and selling that to it was all educational stuff for chemistry and Latin, bizarrely, and some other software that we used to sell to schools educationally. But I actually found it quite difficult to get into tech with my history degree initially. I kind of came in through a side door. I got a management training course with the UK Post Office back in the late 90s, but it happened to be in their IT division. So then I just kind of started using the computer I was given, and then some people across the corridor said, "Hey, this youngster knows what he's doing, can build a database." So I moved into tech through that. So that was me growing up. I was always pretty nerdy. I've got to say, it was a long time until I really got enough confidence to do something like this and actually talk to another human in public. You know?
Yeah.
In fact, I really credit going to IBM when I was 24, 25 as a then experienced hire, and having to go and be a consultant, which means going to a different customer most days and having to like strike up a relationship and fix a problem for them. And that kind of helped me to grow some social skills and learn to pay attention to which soccer teams had played the previous night, so I could have a conversation with my customer, you know. And actually, that time at IBM, I was there for 10 years. I've shot you through from being born to my mid-20s here. Was when I started doing more public speaking and things as well. So actually late 20s by then. So that was me growing up, I guess. Just sort of interested in helping and tinkering.
It's interesting because I remember, I was a very shy kid. I was a very nerdy kid as well. I never sold any software growing up. But I was kind of the same, where my background was actually criminal justice. My bachelor's is in criminal justice. And then I pivoted into computers to get back into what I want. But I don't know if you ever had teachers that were like, being able to publicly speak, no matter what field you're in, is going to be massively useful. And I was just like, nah, I'll just stick to my thing. And it wasn't until my 20s as well that I kind of opened up, and I haven't stopped talking since.
Well, I had terrible public speaking experiences at school for sure. They're the kind of things that I have flashbacks to. They're the embarrassing things I did in front of an audience when I was 15 years old, are things that I remember now and cringe over. But I had a really fortunate childhood and education. I'm very grateful for the opportunities that I've had in life, I have to say. I had some really great teachers, and there was a point where I had to make a choice about what I was going to go do at my senior level, and then into university. And I could have, I was being kind of courted by the science teachers and the arts and social science teachers. Wow. And I just chose to do the thing I was interested in, which was history and English. So that's why I ended up going that path. I just kind of went with the thing that I felt more excited about at the time. It was difficult then getting a job in tech because I didn't have any mathematics or science as an educational background past the age of 16. So
no, but I think that gives us a unique experience of, again, my background was in criminal justice. It's because I didn't know what to do in college, right? You have to go to college. So I went to college and I did criminal justice because I found it interesting. And then it gives you this experience of, at least for me, it was, okay, well, I want to kind of pivot, and I'm fine starting at, step one, whatever it is. And then I figured out what I wanted to do. I ended up working at Red Hat. So when they were bought out by IBM. So technically, we both worked for IBM.
Interesting. My best friend from school, who I used to sit next to in maths classes, he ended up working for IBM, for Red Hat straight out of school, straight out of university. and I think he's still there. He works on he was working on like low level printer drivers back in the late 90s. But I've kind of lost touch with them. And obviously, IBM acquired Red Hat after I left there. But huge acquisition there. I used to, when I was at IBM, I used to contribute to their internal Linux distribution, which at the time was based on Ubuntu, originally, before they bought Red Hat. And then I was running Ubuntu on my ThinkPad. And then I got a Mac at a certain point as well, and started doing stuff with Mac. So again, that was in sort of mid 2000s, late 2000s. So I've been always kind of all across the map in terms of tech. Windows, Mac, Linux, Unix, whatever. And it's been great. I'm one of these people, I guess, that likes to try stuff out, ends up going down rabbit holes, gets frustrated sometimes, but likes to try new things. And that's why I've been in developer relations for the last 15 years or so, which is where I've been able to go and help developers with problems with APIs. And that's always been fun, because I've never had to sit down with a specification and write an application from scratch, from top to bottom. I've always had the opportunity to solve a problem, help another person solve their problem in whatever language they were learning at the time, they were coming to me with, which has helped me keep up to date, mostly with new languages, because people will come along and say, hey, how does this work in Ruby or Python or Rust or whatever? And I have to quickly do the 101 and figure it out.
Oh, wow.
It's been super fun.
That's holy cow. And we briefly talked about it in the intro, all of the different projects that you do. So before we jump into those, though, first off, do you have any pets? Do you have any hobbies? Do you have any free time? I mean, outside of karaoke, we hit that one.
So pets, no. My wife would love to have a dog. We rent the place we're in, so we need to get permission for those kind of things. We're both animal fans, but we don't have pets. I grew up with pets. I grew up with cats.
Okay.
Hobbies. I mean, tech is a hobby. I mean, I'm really into messing with stuff. I'm really into Lego. So you'll see back on my shelf here, I've got Boba Fett, I've got Iron Man, I've got various other things. If I was to angle my camera up, I'd have I've got a Wally up here, I've got a Yoda, but not a Yoda, a Grogu. And also actually right here on my desk, see if I can do this without destroying things, I've got a full-size Death Star build. I say full-size, it's missing the top 3 layers, but for reasons. But so I'm into Lego. I do spend a lot of time, honestly, contributing to open source stuff, because I love things, and helping and learning new stuff. So a lot of people over the course of my life, I look back and people would sort of have pointed out to me in the past that when IBM friends, that when they went home, they they shut the laptop and didn't do anything with that, and I reopen the laptop and do something different. So
no, and that's one of the biggest things that I learned getting into IT is, and it's been pretty consistent, all of the titans of whatever company I'm in, it really is a passion for folks. It is fun during work and they get their work done, but as soon as they go home, they keep doing it, right? And I can't count the number of guys I talk to that like with AIX, one of them would dial back into the hospital and he would spin up an AIX LPAR and he would play with it and provision it and all this stuff. And it really surprised me. I thought there would be more people like that in tech. And for a lot of folks, it is just work, right? Which is just fine. It needs all kinds. But that's one of the things when I was at Red Hat, I kind of became a mentor of a lot of younger folks. And they're like, how do I learn this? How do I learn that? And it's like, you just play with it. You just sit down and you start doing it. I was like, but you have to understand, if you want to be like, X person that everyone looked up to, it's like, it takes a lot of time. Like, he goes home and he still plays with it. it depends on where you're at in life. Like I've tried to explain to people that I used to do that as well. And I have 2 little boys now, so I've kind of reprioritized. But
Yeah.
I'm lucky that I'm in a position work-wise where I could do some things like this while stuff is a bit quieter. So the best way is if you enjoy it, also give yourself a break. Doesn't have to be 24/7. I don't know about you. My brain starts to melt down after a while.
I mean, we've barely started talking and just met, so I won't go into too much detail, but yeah, I've certainly been through times in my life and career where I've learned that I've had to really recalibrate and take a break and learn how to not be so connected, especially emotionally, into things I work on, because I do care about stuff a lot, very deeply. And so there have been a couple of projects or places I've worked where things have gone south in terms of the level of attachment and what that did to me emotionally. So I've learned a lot on that. To the other point that you just raised, look, I do not have kids, and that does make a big difference to my ability to contribute to do different things and my choices that I make. On the other hand, my mom is still around, and I spend a lot of time thinking about her, and I've got nieces and folks that I want to spend time with. So for sure, those are important things to prioritize as well for me. So in fact, an old co-worker of mine once wrote a document called Working With His Name, and it was literally just kind of like, this is who I am, and these are my behaviors, and this is how to expect to work with me. And wow. I've copied that. I became a manager for a period of time when I was at Twitter, and I shared that with the people I worked with, and just said, look, this is one of the points that was made in there, was especially at Twitter, and I think anywhere now where you're working online, we live in this so-called or seemingly sometimes 24/7 crazy world, right? And everything's connected all the time. So if I send a message to you at 2 a.m. your time, it does not mean that I expect you to respond at 2 a.m. your time. Equally, if I send it at 2 a.m. my time, that's because I don't have a healthy lifestyle at that moment in time. Not that I'm trying to role model for you to follow that experience. As one example, there's various other things in that document that are much more about, who my family is and what questions you're open to ask or not ask, and those kind of things. But I think I found it such a great example from that individual to share that way of working.
No, I love that. I think that's great. I think it's important. You spend at least 40 hours a week with these people you work with, right? You need to know them. And I've worked with people from the West Coast that just like, you don't talk about your life. My manager, he went on a cruise with his mother, and I'm like, oh, tell me about it. And he's like, no, that's my private life.
Sure.
Okay. That's totally fine. Totally get you. But that's, I've never done something like that, but that for me, someone that is very open and talkative, that helps me to understand people. Or on the flip side, there are those people that are like, this guy that we work with, everyone dislikes him because he's just so rude. It's like, guys, he's not rude. He doesn't understand the social cues of it.
Right.
That's not how he works. You kind of have to accept everyone for how they are, right?
People are different, and that's very very important to learn and accommodate. Yeah, for sure.
So you've worked on all kinds of things. I was going to talk about gamesatwork.biz. You have, which is a podcast you do with a friend, you said, right?
Yeah, so 2 friends, actually. Both of them, we were all worked at one point together at IBM, and at the time we were involved in an internal community there, was doing stuff with a platform called Second Life. I was about to say old platform. It's still around.
It's still around.
And if you go back on my blog around the mid 2000s, you'll see stuff that I used to write about Second Life and what IBM was doing there. So the 3 of us got to know each other through that community, and we've stayed good friends for 20 years. It's been phenomenal. And so we started this podcast back then. Wasn't called Games at Work originally. We had another podcast before that, but we've done over 400 episodes of Games at Work now. It's a weekly podcast. It started out as talking about links that people shared online in the context of virtual worlds and collaboration and 3D internet. I know over time that collection of interests has kind of evolved. It's still loosely work and society related, but it's still generally sort of collaboration and gaming. So the original premise was, if you're playing an online RPG, like I think it was Star Wars Galaxies was the original idea.
Oh my gosh.
So there was this whole idea of dancing with Wookiees, where you could kind of like show up and end up dancing with Wookiees in Star Wars Galaxies. But there was a social element to that, and then a team growing experience there. So we were talking originally around sort of how you can take gaming technologies and use them in a work context. And I think we've constantly seen that kind of the games part of tech push things forward, especially now when you look at AI and GPUs being used for AI as AI engines. All of that stuff has kind of come true. So that's what the podcast is. It's a weekly show. It's usually all three of us, but if one of us is not available per 1 week, then it will just be a couple of talking heads talking about the latest interesting tech news for half an hour. But it's also sort of really great fun to keep in touch with these two guys who are both in North Carolina. And I stay in touch, we have a weekly way of connecting and talking about our ways of dealing with the world. So yeah, it's great.
Yeah, you said when you told me that they were in North Carolina, I'm actually in North Carolina as
well.
Right.
Okay.
Yeah, outside of Raleigh, where
you'll be very nearby then. So yeah.
Oh yeah.
Yeah.
So if you ever come to the States to visit, stop by and I'll
awesome.
drink, but I can buy you a beer or something.
Yeah.
That's awesome. Yeah, no, this is it amazes me, and maybe I don't fully understand. So IBM was directly involved in doing stuff in Second Life, or that's
IBM has a thing called had a thing called Emerging Business Opportunities, EBO. And so they used to explore like different possible futures for the tech industry. It's kind of like Doctor Strange, like looking into the future and all the different possibilities. And so there was a period where they were looking at 3D internet as a way of, the way the internet could have gone is everybody hanging out in virtual rooms as 3D avatars and dealing with environments that way. And of course that's kind of evolved into the metaverse and headsets and things, but IBM bought at the time I think 10 or 12 islands in Second Life, which were quite big investments, and were experimenting with setting up virtual retail spaces for big brands in the US. And I remember I did an interview. I was part of a roundtable interview with a journalist from the BBC that was broadcast on TV in this virtual space. So, yeah, we were doing some real stuff there. We were integrating it with different sort of Internet of Things technologies and figuring out what could be done. So I'm just trying to see if I've tied it down, but I've got this little orb thing down here. On my hand, which is not showing up great on camera. It's kind of this pink purpley ball. So that's an Internet of Things connected device that's connected to a technology I used to hang out with more frequently or advocate for, called MQTT, which is a messaging technology for Internet of Things connected devices. And so that thing there is listening to the latest color that's being shared online and lighting up. It's a tiny little example, but the idea was that you could do things like go into Second Life, switch on your lights in your virtual home, and it would switch on a light in real life, or vice versa. So those kind of things were little experiments we used to do. So
that's amazing. And I the reason I know MQTT is actually Home Assistant. Home Assistant uses it for its messaging queue, right?
Indeed it does. Yeah. That's all my vibe as well, for sure. Yeah.
That's one of those things, again, with having non-techie little kids and wife. Like, I love playing with those kinds of things, but it's like when I'm out of town and something breaks, it's like I can't fix it for you guys. You got to wait. So I try to keep it to a minimum, at least for me. So how do you balance your work and your personal life? It seems like they are very intertwined. Like you are constantly playing with tech and stuff like that, but you do have family. So
Yeah. Well, look, I'll be open. This is as broadcast as I've done on the internet. I had a moment a few years ago where I had to take a break from things. I lost a family member and things got pretty bad. So yeah, I've tried to reprioritize things. So I'm not always the best at it, but what happened, as most people will know, is a strange person bought the company I used to work for and fired everybody because he could do it all better himself. So I found myself at the end of a 9-year time with that company, pretty stressed out, pretty traumatized by that whole experience. And I decided I wanted to take 6 months out. So this is the end of 2022 when Musk bought Twitter.
Yeah.
And I sort of took 6 months out, even though what that actually involved was me finally going to FOSDEM, which is the big European open source conference that happens every year in Europe. For the first time, I went to FOSDEM the year in February after we all got fired, because I had the opportunity, because I was able to do my own thing for the first time in that period. So I did some travel. I got back involved in communities I'd sort of not been so deeply involved in. Something else that happened was my wife and I decided we wanted to kind of unload all of the junk that had piled up through the pandemic, and move it into somewhere else. So we had our home back. So we got an art space in nearby where we live, created a little, I intended for it to be like where I do my tinkering in electronics. But we both kind of got really interested in pen plotters and art. So we've got this art studio called Forge and Craft, which is kind of an art studio / maker space that the two of us go and do things in. And I try and sort of take an interest. There is technology underlying, but I try and take an interest in the history of the human interaction with the technology. So I gave a talk a couple of years ago, or 18 months ago, about the history of computer art, not in the sense of ask ChatGPT to generate you an image, but in the context of mathematicians in the 1960s starting to experiment with pen plotters to draw charts, and then that evolving into this whole art movement, which it did and has happened. And you can still get these pen plotters, which are very technically straightforward, XY motorized devices that move a pen around, and they've been repurposed. When I was at school in the 80s, these machines were what you got output from computers with, because you didn't have laser printers and inkjets and all those things we use today. You literally, if you wanted to get your architectural drawings out of your program, you had to, it was drawn out with a very accurate pen plotter. Those things have now been repurposed by artists. So we're part of that whole community. So that's kind of what I try and spend time doing as well. Like I say, it's definitely still technology, but I try and take an angle of creativity as well.
It's a physical thing. Like there's something about building software, right? But it is not tangible.
It's that word. I knew I was about to use the word tangible. That's exactly it. It's really fascinating to me. And if you think about the way that a pen draws and layers up ink on paper, and you think about the fact that the texture of every sheet of paper, it could be different. You could be working with parchment or hand pressed cotton pressed paper versus super fine thin Japanese paper or whatever. Every single interaction between your pen and your paper or other medium, people use paint, people use all kinds of other kind of stamping and other techniques, and it is always a unique output, tangible output. So that is something that we really value, the two of us. We're surrounded in our art studios with many other artists of different categories and backgrounds, and we are kind of the odd ones out who have all the fun gadgets, and I do 3D printing and all kinds of other things. So people tend to walk in and go, "Oh my God, you're not artists, you're technology people that are destroying the world with your AI." And we're kind of like, "No, not exactly. We're not really that into that version of technology. We're more into the tangible, make it yourself stuff." So.
Yeah, and I've been surprised by how many folks that I know that like were mentors that have been in IT for 30, 40 years. And it's like one guy was a blacksmith, another one, he does just metalworking in general with, like presses and folding metal and stuff like that. Not blacksmith, but, and I think we all at this point have heard the kind of anecdotal IT guy that's like, you know what, I just want to go own a farm and get out of IT, because it's there's just something that's ephemeral, that it feels like it's always broken. You're never getting anywhere. And like, if I carve this duck out of wood, like, you can't take that from me. This is mine. I created that. And yeah, I like that. And Lego. I also have Lego. I have like NASA stuff. I have Space Shuttle and Saturn V and all those. And it's just
nice.
It's something to it's still that puzzle, right? It's still that piecing it together, but then you have this accomplishment afterwards, and it's really rewarding in a wholly different way.
Yeah, for sure. Yeah.
So stepping back, and if you're okay talking about Twitter, you had been there for a number of years. How did you get started there? What was your I never personally used Twitter. I never used centralized social media because I'm one of those open source guys. It's very security conscious. I always wanted my stuff, and not that I predicted Musk, but it was always what happens to your, or the 23andMe situation that's going on, right? Like, what happens to all of that data? So and I'm sure you did not start there in hopes that you'll make a billionaire oligarch super powerful or something. So are you able to go through and
talk about this? I'm happy to. So absolutely. I got my account on there in 2007, and pretty early on. I was in the sort of first 500,000, which is a low number. It was great back then for growing a community, building a community, and especially in the tech space. It was pretty niche initially in tech and in a certain group communities. And I built a really lovely network through going to hackathons and other events, and then got into public speaking and kind of had this growing audience and stuff. And that was great. It was 2007. I didn't actually join the company until 2014. So, I did other things in between. I carried on at IBM for a long time doing blogging and things. And in 2014, I was invited. I was at Cloud Foundry, and somebody contacted me from Twitter and said, "Hey, we're growing. We need a developer advocate in London, and your name's on the list." And I was super excited back then. It had just gone through a sort of it was just when it had gone public, just after it had gone public. So I missed the big sort of happy moment for share value and stuff. But it was still really exciting, and I'm grateful for that experience. I think we did a great set of things. Cambridge Analytica, you mentioned. I think you mentioned earlier. No, you didn't. That came up in another conversation I had earlier, but that happened while I was there, and so I joined thinking, let's get developers more access to the Twitter API. But where I'm going with the Cambridge Analytica references, reality quickly kicked in. The realities of how things could go wrong. So we were very cautious and protective of that API. I really wanted to let people have more access, but we needed to be really careful. So I was on the developer side. Absolutely. None of us. I think very few people were excited about the acquisition, and it was hard. To your point, I've always also been an open source person. I used to, when I mentioned I was on at IBM, I was contributing to our internal Linux distribution. I was involved back then with the Ubuntu UK podcast because some of the co-hosts worked at IBM as well with me. That was, again, back in the 2010s, early 2010s.
Was that with Popey and Wimpy?
Yeah, yeah, yeah.
I listened to that. I remember that. Yeah.
Alan is a really good friend of mine. I'm Martin's Martin and that. Yeah. So I now I'm still involved with something called Og Camp in the UK, which is an unconference that grew out of that same community of people. So I've always been very open source oriented. Clearly, Twitter had other directions in terms of advertising and all that sort of stuff.
Sure.
And clearly, right now, I'm having very different conversations. I definitely have gone through a period of recalibration in my life and my thinking about the world. I think Twitter has had, and it did have, because it doesn't exist anymore. There is no Twitter. An incredible trajectory as a company, as a technology, as an opportunity to connect people.
Yes.
It has, in the longer term, been misused, and that makes me extremely angry and extremely sad. But it's not something I can influence any longer from inside of there. So I'm going to do what I can to change things about the way that the rest of the world thinks about these matters now. So yeah, I mean, I think that's really my set of memories of that period.
Well, I think it again gives you a really unique view on all of this. Being someone from the outside, there was always a ton of pushback on how do you take essentially all of the world's community and get them to get along, which is impossible, right? There's no way, especially with the way that we all kind of yell past each other, right?
Yes.
And do you see any of the same kind of weaknesses in specifically Mastodon or the Fediverse in general, that we have an opportunity to set ourselves apart and do better than Twitter? Do you foresee that we're going to end up in a similar situation?
That's a great question, Ozoned. Listen, I've been thinking about this increasingly deeply recently. For those who don't know me, and also for those who, we haven't done a big announcement about this as such, because we've got some other stuff we'll be announcing as the organization changes. As of about 2 weeks ago, I'm very grateful to have a sort of a full-time role at Mastodon rather than a very occasional one day a week role. And I'm now head of communications. So part of that role involves telling this story a bit more broadly and answering questions like that. I was on stage at South by Southwest, as I mentioned earlier, talking about communities alongside some people from some other platforms. Blue Sky was one of them. And there is a big difference between this context, or this kind of everyone in the world can talk at the same time, versus humans actually seem to work very, very well in smaller communities where people can grow trust bonds and relationships and understanding of one another. So the way that I've started to think about the Fediverse and Mastodon as part of the Fediverse is this kind of constellation of communities that can directly interoperate. It's all based on a standard activity pub, so people can connect from a niche to a broader community or another niche that is directly aligned across the world if they want to. They don't have to. They have control. They can curate their own spaces much more carefully. And because you have this somewhat artificial, but also actually technical, specific context of a server or an instance, and those are owned by people and have their own rules and their own set of instructions about what the behaviors are. But the people that run those communities can know them really well and understand, if they choose to, the nuances of interaction in it. I am not a furry, but I know a bunch of people who are, and they have different, and some people in those communities have much different interactions and nuanced interactions than I might expect in the communities that I'm part of. and I respect that, and I don't understand it. I don't claim to, fully kind of get every kind of way that they may or may not refer to each other and so on. But there's different ways that you might be required to moderate or interact with those communities. So the one size fits all approach doesn't always work. Another example of this from my background is when it comes to developer relations, the thing that Twitter lost when it didn't continue to have a fully open API was the opportunity to really cater to niche communities. So a good example of that is for users who have vision difficulties. So Twitter as a company was catering to the broadest possible audience, which was the whole world, right? And a large portion of that is English speaking. A large bit of Twitter's audience was Japanese speaking as well. That was their second largest community, and the second place they opened an office after the US. And yet there was a big cultural gap because none of the engineers were in Japan about how Japanese users use that app. For example, in the Fediverse, you've got entire communities, the so-called Starkies like Miski and so on, that grew up in Japan. You've got open APIs for all of the platforms really, and the Mastodon APIs are heavily used, and you can build unique experiences that cater to the way that people want to consume or interact with the information. So you could build a much better, Twitter was never likely to spend a lot of money on people who had vision difficulties beyond what the operating system offered. So, VoiceOver in iOS is pretty good, and as long as you write your iOS app well and integrate it with VoiceOver, it'll be a decent experience. But there were a lot of users who wanted a different experience, and there were some apps that got built on the old Twitter API to help with that. But it was something that Twitter I wanted to encourage, but we had to sort of tolerate and enable rather than fully endorse and support and promote to the broader community. So, sorry, I do this thing. No. Our CTO Renaud often says I wander off in my conversations, or don't always stick to the point. And I know that's this conversation, but I think there are definitely ways in which having a more open set of communities that cater to the needs of their members are more free to interact with one another and curate each other and their interactions with each other more freely, rather than being all in one room, as you say, shouting past one another. It doesn't work. In humans at scale, at really big scale, generally don't work. We work well in my experience. We work well, and as a historian, observation, we work well at and I can't give you the number. It's not the Dunbar number of whatever number of individuals he claimed you can have as a group, but we work well at a certain scale. And even in big companies, the reason why you have departments and smaller teams within those departments is because you work well at that scale. And you then delegate down the responsibility. Because a certain work groups and certain interaction levels work. But if you had everyone in the company of our 400,000 person company or whatever it is shouting at the same time, you get nothing done.
No, I relate to absolutely everything you say. It's interesting because when I was at Red Hat, I was in support, and we did have Japanese customers, and it was very clear from management, you do not touch a Japanese case. Not because we don't speak Japanese, and not because they couldn't speak English, but because they have very specific social cues and very specific ways of addressing each other, and they can become not everyone, right? Like this is not. I'm not trying to get stereotypical, but they have very specific ways of addressing each other in Japan, and we never wanted to cross those lines. So with that kind of segmentation, those little niche communities, which again, as Twitter, you are a public company. You have to go for the largest dollar, right?
Yeah.
Like you want to foster these things, but if it's only 1% of your market, you can't really do that. And as for the accessibility thing, I remember one of the biggest things when Reddit turned off their API.
Yes.
We have someone that is a blind user, and he's basically like, they've made it impossible for blind people to access
Exactly.
Fedi.
Yeah,
And
that's right.
I feel like the Fediverse, while we don't have, billions of dollars, if you want to do this, you can do this, and you can be rest assured that like ActivityPub is not just going to turn itself off underneath you.
Right.
Even something as simple as I just saw someone messaged, I was looking at PyFed Social earlier, and I saw a different front end for Mastodon, and I was like,
yeah,
this is a whole new way of doing this. You click on a conversation, it actually blows it out to the side, and then you can see that whole history there. And I'm like, you can pick this. Like, if this is what you want, you can pick it. Like, no more of this, oh my God, Twitter changed or Facebook changed the entire UI, right? Like, that doesn't work for me. And I think that's one of its strengths of it. We have a long way to go, right? We have a lot of things to learn, but we also have a lot of opportunity that I feel that Twitter or Facebook or any of the big guys really are not interested in or not capable of. Do you agree with situations like that? I know I'm an idealist, and
I think it's true. I think the challenge, and I've said a few times now, that this is one of the toughest jobs I've ever done, because of the diversity of the community, and that's of course a wonderful thing. But there's a lot of different projects that have their own ways of doing things. I mean, yes, there's an underlying kind of connective tissue, which is ActivityPub, but you're dealing with different programming languages. You're dealing with different, arguably front-end APIs in the case of Mastodon, or platforms. You have some different socio-political viewpoints in terms of how much you believe in smaller communities versus bigger, more inclusive, or not, or more. The language is really difficult, isn't it? That's another reason why it's a challenging thing. You've got people that want to protect and absolutely believe they should be protected particular aspects of the culture that has been part of the Fediverse all along. But there's also an argument that says there's an opportunity to grow and give more people an opportunity to experience a different way of interacting online through social media and through social networks. And it's really, it can be tough to do that, but we've got opportunities here. This is one of the things I first posted on my blog about when I started getting involved in Mastodon a couple of years ago. Directly. I mean, I've been using Mastodon since 2017-ish, I think.
Yeah, that's when I've been
very lightly, but because it was open source and that's another social network, and I love all those things. But one of the first things I wrote about was the opportunity for developers and for people to help to build this space. We've got Fedi Forum coming up next week, which I'm excited about, and I know that Johannes spoke about here, and there's always so many ideas and so many cool new things happening, and opportunities for new people to meet each other that haven't yet spoken, but have got similar ideas. One of the things that I've written a little GNOME app, GNOME shell extension for is radio, not for Radio Free Fedi. That's what went away. The Indie Beat. So the Indie Beat is a little streaming radio station that builds off of something called Bandwagon, which Ben Pate created, which builds on top of another project he created called Emissary, which was kind of like a build your own Fediverse-based community software. So he came along to Fedi Forum about a year ago, presented Emissary. Then in the same session or same Fedi Forum, there were people talking about music and how we can get more musicians and creators feeling comfortable on the Fediverse and give them tools. So he then pivoted that into creating this thing called Bandwagon, which is kind of an alternative version of Bandcamp.
Oh, okay.
Really cool, and it's Fediverse enabled, so you can follow friends and folks on there, and they can put their music through that. And then he's now going to be enabling payments as well in the future. And so then there's the Indie Beat, because Kirsten, who runs the Indie Beat, knows Ben and was in touch with the person that was running Radio Free Fedi, and so musicians can opt into putting their music onto this online streaming radio station. And things like that, the opportunity to build something new by showing up to Fedi Forum, or just collaborating in these environments, talking on the hashtags, sharing what they're doing. I mean, I know that the audience of users that run GNOME on their desktop and are interested in the Fediverse is relatively small, and want a streaming radio station is relatively small. But it was a fun way for me to build a little GNOME app that I hadn't done for 20 years, because I did GNOME stuff way back in the beginning of time, and stream some music and learn GStreamer and fiddle around. And you can now just get this little extension for GNOME that pops in your header bar, and then if you're hearing some music you like, you open up the menu, you look at it, you click on the link that takes you to the Bandwagon profile, and then you can buy their stuff. It's great. I love it.
Dude, this is what I love about it. So to step back, the IBM, Second Life, no one here except for you and internal to IBM really had a clue that existed, right? And again, we all know the Google graveyard, right? It doesn't make us enough billions, so it's not valuable to us. Where again, someone can go out there and just be like, I'm going to compete with, Bandcamp, and here's a fully open source, fully federated Bandwagon, and it doesn't take a million developers to do this. There's nothing that the big guys do that we can't. But what we can do that they can't is we can have passions, and we can have excitement and just drive our idea. It doesn't care. We don't care if anyone else uses it, right? Like when we use it and we're excited about it, we're just going to keep doing it. Yeah. And this is amazing. I've not heard about this. I'm definitely going to be checking.
All right, I've set you up for another 3 shows. So
yes. There's so many people to talk to. I absolutely love this kind of stuff.
Yeah.
Learning about all these new techs. So thank you for that. Yeah, I'm definitely going to
look into that. But no, I mean, look, there's loads of opportunity, and we can do things differently, for sure. And I think that, back to what I think was what I remember was the question. We have to, if we want this stuff to work, there's a loose set of things we can agree on together that we don't want. We want to embrace privacy. We want or minimize the amount of information we take from users. We want to give them free and open ways to interact. We want to give them the choice and opportunity to do their own, make their own choices about who they and how they interact, right, online, own their own data, have that data hosted in a location in a community that they feel is trustworthy, and we need to keep building that out and encouraging people to think about the negative aspects of possible business models that could be implemented if you keep making the same choices to go the thing that looks familiar every time, because it's easy and we're lazy and we just want the thing that's familiar, and we find learning something is annoying. I'm in this flow or whatever. I'm just in this ease of pick up the thing that looks most familiar and carry on the way I was before. Yes, but you're going to make the same mistakes again. So if you keep doing that, I can't help you. If you're going to try something new and put a little bit of effort in, then we can grow together.
Yeah. No, and I mean, I think it's important to remember too. It's not even that we all change, right? Our habits change, our opinions change, and that's human. That is not flip-flopping. That is not selling out, whatever you want to call it. But again, something that Mastodon has done very well, thanks to ActivityPub. But Mastodon made it very easy, which you and I were talking earlier, and you said, are you ozoned at mastodon.social? And I had started an account there, but we have allowed us to move our digital identities from one section to another. You no longer have to stay in this community that you originally thought was right for you and doesn't, right? So one of the things that we talked about the other day was there was a lot of backlash around Facebook and Threads, and then all of the Fedi Pact came up, and then I remember a significant amount of sysadmins, or even Dan's up with I think it was Pixel Fed or Loops with the whole political issue. It's like, guys, you could spin up your own. You can go to another spot. If you don't like that decision, you know, there are people out there that'll help you. Like we're more than happy to help you set up things so you can build the community that you want and still be able to access everything else that you want.
I think, though, on that subject, I think we should be very respectful and thoughtful of the fact that is a lot of effort. It takes effort to learn how to do that stuff. Eleanor Rossini, who's phenomenal, has got a great newsletter called The Future is Federated, and has been this amazing advocate for the Fediverse and still is. She's gone through this cycle of learning Linux by getting a Raspberry Pi, learning Linux, starting to do some self-hosting, and then I think within the last week kind of said, oh, it's all too hard, and should I go back? Should I just go back to hosting, go back to my hosted Ghost blog? And I get that, when we say, oh, you can just self-host it, or oh, you can fork it, or yes, those things are opportunities that open source affords you, and the relative but not complete accessibility of and relatively low price ish of technology can offer you. But we can do that, but we are a minority, right? We are the blessed tech geeks and people that get it and want to spend our time doing it, and not everybody does. And we need to also make it really easy, much more easy, because I don't think you can make it really easy, but much more easy for people to make informed choices and get help to do the things that they want to do with their data and with their online identities, without it all being, we've given you the code, go do it, right? I mean, that there is a massive barrier from between that and actually having a comfortable online experience. Yes, I agree with you, and you're going back to where I think you're going with the Threads comment. Absolutely, you can make choices to not have an account on a server that federates with Threads, or you could move to someone that doesn't, or vice versa. You could encourage your admin to domain block Threads. You need to know what and why and how those decisions come about. I think,
and there has, the whole Fediverse, everyone's like, well, where's the money at? How do we get the money? But I've seen there are now specific Fediverse hosts that just tell us these couple of things and we'll spin it up for you, we'll manage it for you, and you just log in. And I think that because we're still in really early days, the internet, the internet really came about the early 90s, and so the Fediverse really started to pick up steam 5 years ago, maybe. So we're not even at the Facebook era of the internet, right? We have a long way to go, and I think a lot of these things will get sorted over time, such as that. I talked to someone with activity pods, for instance, which I think is a very interesting technology.
Really cool.
I've been following it for years when it was still solid pods. And I think that idea, and how do we bring that with this and make it all into that user-friendly, portable, you click a button and it does what you want to do, will come as long as we all keep investing in it and we keep
keep talking and wanting to interoperate, and wanting to take part in the community, because you can also, and I hope this doesn't happen, but you can also say, actually, I'm going to build my own thing and go over there, and never talk to you folks. and that's a freedom that we have that people have as well. But I'd much rather that we try to keep talking through the challenges of making things work together, because it's not straightforward, and we have different approaches and ideas about how to do it, which is why I love Fedi Forum, which is why I love some of the channels that we're in, we have on Matrix, and the communities that we can, and Activity Pub Rocks, which is another website where there's a discourse server where people talk about the protocol. There's the Fediverse report that Laurence Hoff does, which kind of keeps us informed about how projects interoperate and how, which projects have made these announcements and things. There's a ton of really good resources out there if you're interested in keeping up with it all, which I am, because I have to, because I get paid.
You've also talked to the Threads developers as well, right? They're, as we were talking about with Fedi Pack, there's a lot of mistrust there. And do they understand that mistrust? Do they want to be those kind of good stewards and actually join the Fediverse as a part of the Fediverse?
Yeah, I think it's a great question. Look, I know some of the folks who work directly on the Threads implementation, and I get on very well with them all. I don't have any cross words with anybody individually. I've been on stage with their head of policy. She was challenged on that stage about lots of the policy changes at the meta level that have caused, around moderation and other decisions. I'm not.
Well, obviously you can't speak for
them, right? I can't. I can tell you what I think, and I think that I'm disappointed at the speed that they've moved and the level to which they've done a full integration with ActivityPub. And I see articles being posted saying, "Oh, well, Threads is based on ActivityPub." No, it's not. Threads is Instagram, but text only, slightly refined, so it's not quite as nonsensical stream, but it's still very confusing to me in terms of, like, I'm used to now a chronological timeline in Mastodon, and it's putting stuff way out of order, days out of sequence, which is really confusing to me. I think and they have only made it that you can't do full two-way responses. You can't respond from Threads you can't reply from Threads into the Fediverse, which is really annoying. So I think they're always going to keep it as this kind of separate stream of content or interoperability inside of their app. I hope they get to a point where it's sort of quote unquote fully interoperable. I don't know whether they will, because of all the changes that have happened. But I get on really well with them. I believe that the folks who've built it have done so in a really thoughtful way. I've asked a lot of thoughtful questions about how to do this without breaking our world, the Fediverse. They didn't want to come in, suddenly give us 500,000 or whatever millions of new users that could overwhelm the whole Fediverse if you suddenly have those volumes. They've done it slowly, but I think they've done it too tentatively. They've made it really hard. They ask you every few weeks if you really want to keep sharing to the Fediverse, and that just adds more barriers rather than increasing the ability for people to share. So, we have done some work with them in terms of, like, those conversations about how things should interoperate. That's all. We haven't done any more than have those kind of technical conversations. And I think it's a good opportunity for them to say to their users, if they were going to do it in a really clear way, there's this other world over there that you could go and move to.
Yeah.
They haven't got to that point. They've not got to a point of saying, "Oh, here's export all your friends list and you can go and recreate your network somewhere else." You can't do that. Right. And that's what the ideal world would be in the future.
Yeah, and I think I've said this to other people before. ActivityPub is out there. Anyone can implement it. X could implement it if they want to. Whether they do or whether they see value is up to them. We'll still be here. But I think that one of the big things, which leads into my kind of next discussion with you, is this idea that, we've seen big tech do the standard, what was the words for Microsoft? Expand, exploit, exterminate, or whatever, right?
Yeah.
With Google XMPP, for instance.
Yeah.
We've seen Facebook do it with other things, but so there's this major hesitation now of a one technology. It doesn't matter if it's open, it doesn't matter if it's built on this and can interact. There's always this fear now of the behemoth in the room is going to decide to take his toys and go somewhere else, and it's going to crumble. So Mastodon, there is that lot of pushback of, oh, Mastodon, I can't believe Mastodon is implementing threads now or something like that. The rest of the Fediverse can't handle that. We don't have the bandwidth to do that. But how do you guys look at that kind of issue? And I'll say I'm a bit biased in this communication because ActivityPub's open source, Mastodon's open source, Mastodon is nonprofit. I think you guys are trying to be as good of stewards to the entire thing, not just Mastodon. So what do you say to those folks that are just concerned that Mastodon is getting too big, or what have you?
Thanks for asking. It's a great question. And look, I've been part of the community and been in and done stuff with different projects and show up to Fedi Forum and helped Johannes with Fedi devs and things. So I see myself as, yes, I am on the core team, but I see myself as part of the community as much as everyone else. And I recognize those questions being asked. But the first thing I'll say is that Eugene is and the team have made this decision recently, which we wrote about in January, to create this new nonprofit in Europe to sort of safeguard the assets, make sure that there won't be a single billionaire owner of the copyrights, of the trademark, all of the things that could be bought and taken as a sort of network. I mean, there is simply nothing central other than that to sort of buy and take and misuse, right? Because you've already got tens of thousands of Mastodon instances running that are nothing to do with the core team. They run the code that we provide, but they have their own rules and communities. I think that at different stages, different projects get to different sizes, right? And that's an interesting part of this whole thing. Another thing that I've been trying to do in the last couple of years, and I know other members of the team have as well, is we are a small team. We're growing. We just welcomed a new developer this week, Echo, working on the
I think I literally just saw that.
Really excited about, and we've got some great folks on the engineering team. We've got Shannon and Gregory that do our mobile apps. We've got Claire and Renaud and Eugene that do a lot of stuff, and David that do a lot of stuff on the back end. So we've got a really phenomenal engineering team. But none of us want to own this thing. And we are trying very hard when we want to do new things, like with quote posts, where we said, look, this is actually bigger than Mastodon. If a post federates and it's a quote post, then we want to think about the implications. So we've taken a slow approach to that. Some people are frustrated at how slow the approach has been. And other people are saying, well, why don't you just do what that other project did over there? There's a bunch of things to talk about and think about. So we've tried to now say, look, we're going to tell you what we're working on ahead of time before just jumping out and surprising you. At Twitter, it's a centralized thing. And occasionally you'd have a moment where you'd want to pre-announce to the developer community what change was coming. The first thing that I can remember in 2014 that I worked on was mutes, because we wanted third-party client apps to be able to do mutes at the same time as our own app. So we pre-announced that we were doing it. But increasingly over time, it became competitive with Facebook and other things. And so if we pre-announced a feature, the other companies were likely to go clone it or shut it down, do something that would take away the excitement. And that we don't have that in Mastodon. It's not a thing, right? Stuff is developed in the open. It's an open source project. You can see what's happening in the code if you choose to go and look. We now publish a monthly blog post called Trunk and Tidbits. For those of us like yourself, Ozoned and I, that are old enough, we used to talk about the trunk code, right? So when back in source control days, you instead of like main, you'd have trunk, which would be like the main code. So I tried to come up with this pun on Trunk and Tidbits, which is our monthly post about like what the major things we've merged in the code base are this month. And I also try to point out what the community's doing around the code as well. So we're trying to be much more open about how we communicate where we're going. People are going to ask questions. People are always going to say, well, you know, there's this big project and, you know, they're not showing up to whichever bit of the community to have the conversation. If Eugene or Claire or whoever was to come to some of the conversations or every single time they happened and answer every single email from every single person asking, can we ask them a few questions? They wouldn't get any code written, you know, and do things forward technically. So that's why the team has grown a bit, and they've got me now helping to handle some of those sort of outbound social and business-ish interactions. You know, meetings with the boring things like, you know, talking to regulators and other organizations, right? Because we need to do that. It's got to a point where we've grown up a bit, you know. And that's exciting. It's also challenging, and if we can do that in a way that's respectful of other which I want to do, in a way that's respectful of other Fediverse projects and help them as well in those interactions, provide you know, ways for them to connect or help them to, if they get to situations where questions are asked. The specific thing I'm thinking of is this organization IFTAS, which has been helping with trust and safety across the Fediverse for the last couple of years. And so they've built this wonderful knowledge base of documents to help people that do moderation deal with, you know, difficult questions about how you handle certain types of content, or how you deal with helping your moderators with stress and those kind of things. There's different things they've helped to build there. So and again, if you put those down into individual projects such as Mastodon, then it takes away a lot of the opportunity for those to move forward and build the tech. So
well, I think you hit on two really great topics, which you and I had talked about before, is the what was it called, the reply, the whole reply history, right? Like there was, as social media is, there was, you know, a bit of a backlash of, we're so happy to have this, why did it take 7 years to get in? Like this stuff is not easy. And you and I had talked about, like, these are very large code bases, and you can make a code change over here and you don't realize it can break something over here, right? So you don't just need a drive-by patch. You need someone that can contribute the time to maintaining that patch as well. And I likened it to like the Linux kernel hierarchy. No one knows how the entire Linux kernel works. And I would assume as Mastodon grows, you're going to require and depend on people that want to see feature X. Like, okay, that's your baby. We'll pull it in, but we need your help with that.
Yeah, I that's true. So you mentioned a feature, fetch all replies, which we've merged, but we're testing. We know it's potentially going to be part of the next big release, which means that when you go to click to reply to a post, you'll get all of the replies that exist across the Fediverse show up, rather than just ones local to your instance. And that's what has sometimes led to, you know, the reply guy problem. I've done it. I did it, I think yesterday, where I replied to something and then just realized that someone else from another instance had already replied. So that's been contributed. We're really grateful. First of all, thank you to everyone who contributes to Mastodon on the code, as kind of advocates, as supporters, donors, everything. I just want to say thank you so much, because it is a team effort. we have a team of people that work on this, but we rely on all of those other things, and we rely on those extra eyeballs to point out bugs to us and to help us to bring in new features. But you're absolutely right, Ozone. It's not as easy as just saying works on my machine. Okay, so we'll merge it then, and it'll be fine. You know, we need to take a much broader view of things. It's a big project. It's deployed on tens of thousands of servers worldwide, some of which are now running for big institutions like the European Commission. You know, we want things to remain stable. We want to add features, but we want to move at a pace that works. We want to deal with technical debt because the platforms we build on, like Ruby, get updated, so we need to update, and things get deprecated, so we need to deprecate, which is just about to happen next month with Mastodon 4.1. Will go out of support. So and we need longevity. So you're right, we can't just go, oh, this works for now. We need to think a bit more holistically about a feature, how it fits in. If it's on the user interface, how does it make sense? And how we can support it in the future, you know? So yeah, it is a little bit, I don't mind the Linux kernel analogy. I think it is a little bit like that we need to sort of, and I think in the team, we've got, you know, now iOS, Android, web, we've got front end dedicated developers now starting to come on board, which is exciting. We've got back end, and we've got our Fediscovery project, which is kind of an offshoot. And so we've got sort of fields of expertise in the team who know how to deal with those things.
Well, and it's one of those things, and again, the best way I can look at it with the purists, you talked about it earlier, like, no, we just want to keep this for us, right? Linux was the same way back in the day. Like, we don't want to make it easier.
Yeah.
We all want to be on the command line, but one of the most important things that has come out of Linux that I've had to explain to kind of newer folks, like, well, why doesn't it have this feature? Why doesn't it have that? Why does it take so long to merge this? It's like, guys, when something works right, you don't hear about it. But when something breaks, especially at the size of the Linux kernel or Mastodon running tens of thousands of servers, as soon as it breaks, you hear about it from everyone, right? And you need to take your time, make sure that it is not going to devastatingly break things. But yeah, it's the features that bring people, right? People are excited about new things, like, yay, I get to see pictures in my timeline or something. But all of those things have ramifications. All of those can impact somewhere. You want to do it right.
Yeah, I mean, it's, as I say, sometimes it's frustrating to see things going slowly or appearing to go slowly. But other times, when I write the monthly updates, I'm thinking, wow, actually, like last month was a little bit lighter because we'd all been to FOSDEM the previous, and so on. But then the coming month, there's a load of updates to go into the post that will come out in a week or two. So it comes in ebbs and flows. It's exciting.
Well, so looking at the GitHub version 4.3, so a little bit old now, right? October 8th, 2024, 154 commits. Like, you guys don't just sit around doing nothing like this. I started looking through this. I was like, I was gonna try and highlight some of it. There's so much here. This is gigantic.
Wow. I'm glad I appreciate you noticing. It is there is a lot in there, and of course, depending on the angle you're coming from, you're either looking at it as a pure day-to-day user with you, and you have a particular issue on your iOS app or whatever, and you get really, but there's a load of underlying stuff that needs to happen. I'm down in I try to be, but I'm having to recalibrate myself at the moment because I am a techie. I care about things like performance of sidekick queues and Ruby versions and things. But I'm also having to pivot into much more communications, pure communications, event planning, talking to different organizations, and I'm enjoying that. But it is a change for me. So, folks, please be patient with me. I'm trying to do both things in a meaningful way. that
well, and we all have something to learn too, like getting off of hands on keyboard. Like I've talked to so many people in IT, they're like, what do you want to do? And it's like, if you're a hands on keyboard guy, don't go into management because you're going to hate it. And I knew a guy that absolutely amazing, totally into tech, went into management, and it drove him nuts whenever someone would come ask a question. He's like, let me just show you. And it's like, no.
I was a manager for a year at Twitter, and I was really grateful for that opportunity. I hired somebody amazing to join our team, and she's still a good friend. But now I stepped back to being an individual contributor because I enjoyed that opportunity. You mentioned your mentoring time at Red Hat, and I was a mentor at IBM as well. And I love to help folks to level up and learn new things, and that's something that I hope I can contribute to the rest of our team at Mastodon, because we've got a range of different experiences on the group, and I've been fortunate enough to have worked through some interesting companies and have the opportunity to travel and meet different folks in the past. So that's been a fun part of the role, is doing some of that sort of almost sideways mentoring to help people on the rest of the leadership team to sort of connect, and they help me learn, to, like today I sent out an email and somebody kind of was helping me to make it sound a bit better from a marketing communications perspective, in terms of like how we can make it be better. And
I've done that too. I've had too many instances where it's like I ask someone to read over something and they're like, you're talking to them as if you're talking to a person. And I'm like, well, I am talking to a person. They're like, no, but you're in a business.
Yeah.
You need to talk to them like it's a business. I'm like, oh, and then they'll go through and they give me stuff. But I think that it's not even just Mastodon, right? Like Mastodon, it seems that the folks there, again, you don't want to own the whole thing. If there's a third-party project that comes to you guys and is like, hey, we're trying to interact with you and we're seeing this, where's the best place to have those kind of discussions? But also, I'm assuming you guys are very open about, talking to other people. You're not going to build their app for them, right?
But, I mean, the one of the examples that I'm most excited about, and we've had a really great relationship and conversation with, is Ghost, right? So Ghost, the newsletter blog platform, just launched their beta for ActivityPub support that you can get with them. And John from Ghost gave one of the best talks, and I thought, well, just everybody at FOSDEM gave great talks, but John's closing talk on the FOSDEM social web track was really good. The video is available online, talking about his vision for Ghost and how it interacts with the ActivityPub and publishing generally. And he's been great, to and his team to come and talk to us about, like, hey, we're using this underlying framework called Fedify to build our ActivityPub support, and when we do this, this happens, so how can you help us to figure out what's going on? So we try to support that. Again, if that was all we did all day long, answer other questions from other projects, we wouldn't get anything done. But we do have some great relationships, and I'm grateful for those. And if folks are watching, listening, and having challenging issues with working with our platform, then let us know, and I'll try my best to put you in touch with the right folks, because we want to make things work well. If the Fediverse works, this social web thing, the ActivityPub thing, and more services show up, right, that do photos, videos, shopping, whatever, right, gaming, things that you can choose to interact with, right? You're not forced to interact with. Nobody's pushing this stuff into your timeline. You can choose what you listen to and interact with. I would really love a Last FM or something. I think that Libra FM may go down an ActivityPub route in the future, which would be really cool for sharing my music listening. And the more of these services show up and are successful and interoperate well, the greater benefit to the whole community. So back to the Mastodon doesn't want to own everything kind of, or trust size of the project conversation. I think that everything helps. Every new project that comes along helps in some way. People learn, people hear about it.
It gives more what's what I'm looking for, more justification. Like you said, it brings more people in, but the more applications you get dispersed around, it doesn't matter if it's 5 users, 5,000 users. It makes everyone stronger and everyone better, and the Fediverse healthier, right?
Yeah. No, we can't and don't want to do it all. We want to build a really good platform for short text conversation and sharing, that as many people as possible can use and feel comfortable using, and have all of the things that we want to enable, which is, that portability of their networks if they want to, their ability to feel safe, their ability to know that, that their data is sovereign, it's stored in a place and people that they can trust. That's what we want to build, and we want to make it easy for people to have conversations online. That's it. We don't want to build all these other things and become the biggest platform and so on. We want everybody to have a healthy experience online, and that's what I'm here. And this is why I really have waited for the opportunity to work all my time on Mastodon, because I care about this. I had other conversations in the last couple of years, but the things weren't exciting to me, because this is about people, this is about technology, this is about communities, it's about people sharing, and it's all driven through open source and collaboration. It's hard. People don't always get on, but we can work through it, and we can build a better world together. And I know it sounds difficult right now. Lots of us are struggling. There's a lot of stuff going on in the world that people are really struggling with, and I hear it and I see it and I feel it. But we get through this together. We build better stuff and environments and more free environments and a better world together. We create the world we want, and we have the opportunity. We're not all waiting for an oligarch to just tell us how the world's going to be. We have the power. We have freedom and self-determination and self-will. We get to do what we want to do in the world.
I do. I say the same thing, and it's always like, man, I sound so cheesy, but you believe it, right? These social platforms have shown that there's a desire for this, but we need to invest in content, in code, in ideas, just in talking to each other, being empathetic, being compassionate, spreading joy. Like, let's
lift one another up. Yes.
Yeah. Let's stop talking past each other.
Honestly, that's what I love about your show. This podcast, this channel is just, hearing from people like Mr. Funky Dude and
he's awesome. Yeah.
Just, and Stux, and just hearing other people be motivated by the same things and bringing each other along together is just really exciting. It's really, really good.
Yeah. So what does success look like for Andy, or what does success look like for what you want out of Mastodon or ActivityPub? However you want to take that. What is success?
Okay, I'm going to do me, because there's a lot going on at Mastodon right now. There'll be some announcements as we build this new non-profit in terms of like where we're going, strategy and so on. But nothing is changing, but there's some other announcements coming that will talk about where we're going and what we want as a thing. So look out for those in the next couple of months.
Awesome.
What drives me is what I've just talked about. What I want to do is be working on something that contributes to helping the humans in the world get on better, do stuff better, make better choices, not make the same mistakes that we do because history and humans. But that's it. That's what success. I don't have a grand plan. I don't have a grand plan about, like, I very rarely have very rarely thought about what my next role must be or what my next thing must be. I do tend to live fairly day to day and think about the things that I can have an impact on in the world and things that I can't, and try to avoid deeply engaging with the things I can't, because they're going to bring me unhappiness. And I know that sounds really like fluffy and philosophical, but like I said, I've been through some rough patches at times, and that's one of the things I learned, was getting too involved and engaged in the things that I couldn't change was not going to bring me to good places, So and if I can do it by helping a team of people on this open source project and in this non-profit company make something good together, then that's what I want it to be. That's what success looks like.
That's awesome. I love that. Yeah, that's great. So what can people do to help code?
We've got a great load of folks that contribute, and I, as I mentioned, I'm grateful for them. And patience with us as a team is appreciated, because there's a lot of stuff that comes through our GitHub and other channels. I think not necessarily talk about the Fediverse. I think just talking to people that you know about what's wrong with or the problems with existing systems, legacy and centralized systems. Not necessarily saying, and decentralized open source Fediverse software is the best solution, because people switch off as soon as you start talking about decentralized open source and software. Just talk about the problems and show them things you use. And that might be an app called Mastodon and a community of people that you talk to. And help them get started. I think that's really, really valuable. I'm going to say the obvious thing and say, please donate if you're able to. I know not everybody is able to, but we are very fortunate to the majority of our funding comes from Patreon donors and sponsors. And we want this thing to continue going forward. And we need to keep that pipeline of donors and sponsors coming in. So please do that. And just be kind to one another and to us.
Yes.
I think that's always appreciated as well.
It's something that I feel like we take for granted. One thing that I've had to tell people before is text has no tone. So, when you're writing something, think before hitting send, because it's so easy for us to misconstrue something on the internet that might be hateful. I for one, like, I use the old emote, like colon parens all the time to convey my ideas. Like we're not all infallible. I don't know anyone that is, right? We all make mistakes, but don't just start screaming and yelling like, why isn't this done yet? What, this is terrible, etc. Like, let's have those conversations. Let's be positive and try to work together, because this is all of ours. This isn't just Andy's. This isn't just Eugene's. This isn't just Dan's. This is all of ours.
And I would say as well that people change, circumstances change, things change, opinions change. So with things like Quote Post, there was a view that, it had been stated at a point in time that it wouldn't be done. Therefore, it will never be done. Therefore, I don't believe them even if they say it will be done. Things change. We've got some shared views of what we believe in as a team and where we're going. But please, again, just recognize that just because you heard a thing or believed a thing at a point in time doesn't necessarily mean that circumstances don't change. So
it can always change back, right? Like you're not on the whim of one specific person that's just deciding to do whatever.
It is a team effort. And again, I know that not everybody always buys into that, but it is a team effort. It's not usually just somebody going, let's build it this way and that's how it happens. So there's a lot of thought that goes in. So I think that the help that people provide is in donating, in supporting us, in telling their friends about us is great. Keep doing that. We love it. Please keep doing that.
Yeah. That's all great. I love it. Well, now for the real reason I asked Andy here,
I'm excited.
give you an opportunity to win a prize of a lifetime. So the prize today, and
Yes.
I'm very excited, 16,000 water-soluble coffee stirrer sticks that can only be used on tea.
Whoa.
Yeah.
I only drink coffee.
Well, does your wife?
You were expecting tea. You were expecting
I
British person. Who am I? Right? I don't drink tea. No. Okay. That's exciting though. That's exciting.
Yep. So I did think about a gold bar, but who needs gold bars? I mean, I used all of it as gold leaf on my ice cream sundaes because I'm very, very fancy like that. So what can I say? Are you ready for the quiz?
Let's do it.
All right. Favorite movie and why is it Spaceballs?
You see, Spaceballs is great, and Dark Helmet is one of the greatest comedic creations. But am I allowed more than one?
Of course.
I mean, I already told you. I told you Aladdin.
Yeah.
That is a great movie. Disney's Aladdin. I could almost quote from the whole movie because I used to work in a Blockbuster video and it was on repeat.
Oh my gosh! Yeah, that's there.
Back in the day of those chunky VHS cassettes. Equally love both The Princess Bride and The Empire Strikes Back.
Okay.
So those are my favorite movies.
As you wish.
Oh, very good, very good. Well done.
Foo Fighters, Nirvana, or Red Hot Chili Peppers?
Foos.
Oh, okay. I love Foo Fighters. I'm growing up, like I had so many friends that listened to Nirvana, and once Foo Fighters became a thing, I was like, no offense, but I think Dave Grohl really found himself in Foo Fighters.
Exactly. He's got such a great story. I listened to a documentary on the radio about him within the last 6 months. And I agree. My wife and I are big fans. We got back into vinyl, tangible things, and stocked up on a bunch of the Foo Fighter records. I mean, we love all three, but that was my answer to the question.
Awesome. Ice cream: vanilla, chocolate, strawberry, or Neapolitan?
Vanilla.
Vanilla. Okay. I actually go with vanilla as well, just because it's so versatile. You can put so much good stuff with vanilla, right? I think that's the way to go too. What does alternate universe Andy do?
He is a fisherman who also writes novels.
Fisherman that writes novels. Nice. I don't know if you know, but I have a multi-universal phone right here. You can't see it. It's very special. I can't show it off. Patent pending.
Right.
And I called up an alternate universe Andy, and he actually is the inventor of the Foon, which is very similar to the Spork, but less useful. But he usually spends the night shift at the Foon factory trying to make Foons really a thing. He's not having much luck. We wish him the best of luck with the Foon.
Right.
I don't send some good energy and some vibes to him, I guess.
I'll do that. Yeah.
That sounds pretty rough. Toothbrush. Do you wet your toothbrush before or after you put the toothpaste on?
Before.
Really?
Yeah. Wet the toothbrush, toothpaste on, brush, job done, then rinse. Yeah.
I've heard so many people that do that. It had never occurred to me in my mind to do that. I always put the toothpaste on, wet the toothbrush with the toothpaste, and then it wasn't until I was like in my 20s that I was told that like that's really weird.
I've never thought about it. That's always, I guess I was taught it at a point, and that's the way I've done it. So.
I'm glad that I bring very important points to your life. I'm glad we've had this conversation so you can really think hard about this tonight when you're brushing your teeth.
Yeah, definitely. Like I said earlier, I'm recalibrating a lot at the moment, so maybe I'll switch things around. Yeah.
And then, as usual, last question will be sent to you telepathically. I'll let you know when I sent it, which obviously you'll know because it's telepathic. But then you take the time you need and you give me the answer. You ready? Okay. What's your answer?
Yahoo.
Yahoo. Wow. Okay. I was not expecting that one. That's very interesting. But we're out of time. So what can I say? Congratulations. You got every answer, either correct or incorrect. Good job.
Fantastic.
And since you're right across the pond, I just went ahead and tossed the water-soluble coffee stirrers into the pond. So they did dissolve, but they're in there. So, it's just a small pond. It'll get there. Feel free to just fish them out, and it'll all be good.
Great.
So, and that's it for this episode of Fireside Fedi. Thank you, Andy, so much again for coming. Andy, once again, is the head of communications at Mastodon. We all greatly appreciate all the hard work all of the team do, all of the Activity Pub folks, all of the sysadmins, everyone out there.
Yes.
We really greatly appreciate you. None of this works without all of us working together. We're all helping create an open internet and give people choice back on the internet to express yourself without fear of being blocked or oppressed or any of that. Let's remember that, let's all be, remember, let's all be the reason that folks want to choose the Fediverse. Try to be as empathetic, welcoming, friendly as possible. Let's have open conversations, not just drive-by opinions that we yell across at each other. We all have a unique opportunity to learn more about each other. Think about the person behind the screen on the other side that you're trying to talk to and convey to. Watch the language that you use. Try to be as open, empathetic, understanding as possible. Don't forget to tip your admins, projects you depend on, or help contribute to any of the projects. This experiment is only as strong as we make it. And Andy, again, thank you so much for coming. I greatly appreciate you.
Thank you. This has been fun.
All right. Have a good one all. Bye.